What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not Being a Failure, even though you didn't get a promotion last year. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. After drunkenly stumbling out to a 2-8 record to begin this season, Milwaukee has turned their entire season around and not only look competent, but they look just as dominant as the Bucks of previous season. To open the campaign, Milwaukee won just 2 of their first 10 contests, which led more than a few people, myself included, to speculate about whether or not the championship window had closed for this team. I was not definitive in saying that they were cooked. I did express a little bit of concern with them. However, I understood that at the time I recorded that video, only 4 games had passed. And I said in the video that 4 games isn't enough to level a definitive assessment, but it is enough to see what sort of improvement, what specific areas the team could improve on. Regardless, I understood that at the time they still had more than ample, they still had more than enough time to turn the season around. And that's exactly what they've done over these last couple of months. Since November 11th, that was the date of their 10th basketball game, a contest which they lost to the Boston Celtics. Since then, Milwaukee has the third best winning percentage in the NBA behind only Cleveland and Oklahoma City. To me, a large reason why this hasn't really been talked about more, their turnaround hasn't really been talked about as much as it should be, is because it is overshadowed by the historic greatness of both Cleveland and Oklahoma City. They've played 31 games since November 11th, in which they are 22-9. That is their record at the time of this recording. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, they look exactly like the version of the Bucks that year in and year out was expected to contend for a title. Their offense has been rolling over these last couple of months. Across these last 31 games, they are ninth overall in offensive rating. Giannis, of course, is the conductor of this train, and he is once again looking like the most dominant player on the planet, compiling yet another MVP caliber season. This is arguably the best basketball he's ever played. And he's been a multiple time MVP winner, a multiple time MVP finalist. At 30 years old, he is averaging 31 and a half points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists while shooting nearly 61% from the field. Those aren't just his stats from the last 31 games. Those are his stats for the season overall. I confidently feel that he's going to end up once again as an MVP finalist. I'm not sure that he'll be able to win the award. I feel like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is beginning to separate himself from the field, but I do think that if Milwaukee continues to close out the season at this rate, there will be significantly more backing for Giannis. As spectacular as he's been, we can't overlook Damian Lillard. This was a massive acquisition for Milwaukee that had the potential to totally alter the trajectory of this franchise. Last season, he looked a little awkward. There was a little bit of strangeness in trying to incorporate him into the system. It's a monumental shift for a player like Dame, who for his entire career was the go-to guy for a franchise. He went from being in that situation to now having to play off of a player who was better than he ever was. That is not a role that you can easily slide into, especially when you're used to creating so much offense all the time. This year, there isn't a lot of statistical variance in Lillard's production, but it just seems like everything is working for him. It just feels like overall everything is coming together for Milwaukee. Dame, before we move off of him, he is averaging about 25 points per game with a true shooting percentage of 62.3, which is currently on pace to be the third best mark of his career and a clip that is 3 percentage points better than last season. That is a tremendous jump in efficiency, not only on twos and on free throws. Dame's always been a great free throw shooter, but more specifically from the perimeter. And we'll get into it a little bit later. But the Bucks' 3-point attack is really why they've been so dominant this season. But as we know, Star power can only take you so far. You have to have an exceptional supporting cast to be a title contender in the modern NBA. Look across the league. Any team that has championship aspirations has multiple stars, but also more than a few quality role players. Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Boston, the Bucks are now comfortably in that tier. Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis are averaging combined 25 points and shooting about 37% from three. Moreover, Chris Middleton has finally rejoined the team and he is settling in nicely to his new role, much like Damian Lillard. He's been coming off the bench for the last couple of weeks and they're still easing him back into the rotation, but at this point, he's averaging 12 points while shooting 48% from the field. While his scoring numbers are down, it's down largely because he's playing so many fewer minutes. At this rate, he's going to have his lowest minutes played per game since his rookie season. On a per 36 minutes basis, I believe Middleton's averaging like 19 a game, which is more on par with what we're accustomed to, but he's having a terrific season. But the depth just keeps going. This team, this roster that Doc Rivers has phenomenal bench production. AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Torian Prince, Andre Jackson has really emerged for this team. These guys, with the exception of Jackson, are all averaging more than 20 minutes per game. Andre Jackson isn't even that far off. He's at about 18. In total, they have 8 guys averaging 20 plus minutes per game over these last 31 games. And if you include Andre Jackson, this is a legitimate 9-man rotation. To come the postseason, depth is going to play a crucial role in Milwaukee's success. Oftentimes, coaches slim down their rotation. A lot of the reason for that is some of those guys are good enough to be productive in the regular season, but aren't really conducive to playoff success. Some guys simply are not good enough to see extended time in the postseason when every possession matters, when every game matters, and even more so when your stars are expected to play more minutes in the playoffs. Some guys just don't make the cut, which is why when you have an instance like this, you have 9 guys that you can comfortably go to. It makes everything a lot more relaxed. It relieves some of the pressure from Giannis and Dame. It's the steady rotation of not just bodies, but of effective contributors, and more importantly, guys who come off the bench and know their role. These guys all have clearly defined roles, and these roles all work perfectly alongside one another. To expand on this, Giannis and Dame are the star duo. They are the primary shot creators. Brook Lopez, stretch five, who is also the defensive anchor. Bobby Portis is a stretch four as well, who can play a little bit of center if they decide to go small. Chris Middleton is your tertiary scorer off the bench or whenever Dame and Giannis aren't playing or when you need someone to create alongside one of them. That is another crucial type of player that championship contenders need. Just take a look at the Golden State Warriors, who would benefit tremendously if they had Jordan Poole this time around. But when we get to everyone beyond them, Trent, Prince, Jackson, AJ Green, all of them are lethal shooters. And that's an area where Milwaukee needed just a little bit of help. They were a slightly above average shooting team last season. This year, they are the second best three-point shooting team in the NBA, and they are shooting about 40% from three since that November 11th contest against the Celtics, which is currently the best mark in the league. Green, Prince, Trent Jr., Andre Jackson, they are all shooting better than 40% from three, and they are led by Gary Trent Jr., who is shooting damn near 48% from three. Torian Prince as well is shooting like about 44% from three. This is a remarkable amount of space for Giannis to work inside of. Not only that, Damian Lillard benefits from this as well because he is a guard who can play north and south, who can get downhill. And he's also a terrific playmaker as well. There are just so many more offensive opportunities for this team now. While their offense has been spectacular and is no doubt playing a role in their success, the Bucks have never really had to worry about their offense because they had Giannis. But it's their stark improvement defensively that it's allowed them to rocket back up the Eastern Conference standings. For the majority of Giannis's tenure, the Bucks had been one of the NBA's most stifling defenses, in particular when Mike Budenholzer became head coach in 2018. In the years since then, they've fallen outside of the top 10 in defensive efficiency only twice. The first instance was the 2021-22 season, and the second instance was last year. There is a caveat, however. The 2021-2022 season, Brook Lopez played just 13 games. And even then, I think they were only 14th in defensive efficiency. But Brook Lopez is one of the not only best interior presences in the NBA, but he's someone who guards a tremendous amount of shots, like routinely 17, 18, 19, 20 attempts per game. As much as I would love to scapegoat Doc Rivers for the team's poor defensive performance last year, I can't do that because it would be just wrong of me. It would be false. It would be verifiably untrue because Rivers and Adrian Griffin both led pretty meager defenses. I believe pre-All-Star break, the Bucks were like 17th in defensive rating. Post-All-Star break, they were 15th in defensive rating. They were just at best mid on that side of the ball last year. Some of that stems from in bringing on Damian Lillard, who is a shit defender at best. I'm sorry, he's just not that great of a defender, but we know this. So there is some hiding that you have to do with him. You have to figure out the best defensive scheme to prevent him from getting his ass beat every night. I believe they have figured that out this year, but I do also believe that their offseason acquisitions plays a tremendous role in that as well because they simply have better perimeter defenders than last year. And not only that, they have more of them. Trent, Prince, and Andre Jackson are all terrific defenders. AJ Green has been serviceable on that end as well. So far, the Bucks have held their opponents to just 35.5% shooting from three. This impact, however, is twofold. Strong perimeter defenders means that your bigs don't have to overcompensate. They're not being pulled out to the perimeter as frequently. They're not being asked to guard around the free throw line. And this is beneficial because once Brook Lopez does come out of the paint, this doesn't apply so much to Giannis because he's an elite all-around defender. But when Brook Lopez is pulled out of the paint, he's at a disadvantage. He doesn't move so well laterally. He is best served as a traditional rim protector. He's going to have issues guarding on the perimeter. He's going to have issues navigating the pick and roll and being switched onto a guard. When that happens, not only are you leaving your center on an island, there is less of a deterrence at the paint. So the ball handler, he may not have to create the bucket himself, but he can feed it to a wing on a cut who has a size advantage or an athleticism advantage. And overall, your defense collapses. Believe it or not, this hampered the Bucks tremendously last season. Despite having two elite interior presences, opponents shot greater than 71% inside of 3 feet. That was one of the that was like the fifth or sixth worst mark in the NBA. This season, that rate has dropped down to 67%. What's strange about this is Milwaukee is actually allowing more of their opponents' shots to come from three. About 44% of all of their opponents' shot attempts this season are threes, which is up from 38% last season. The theory behind this is that you're limiting higher quality shots for your opponent. A three is worth more than two. However, teams are less likely to make a three, 1.5 to 2 times less likely to make a three than a two. If a team is shooting 70% inside of 3 feet and they take 10 layups, they're going to score 14 points. If a team is shooting 30% from three and they take 10 threes, they're only going to score 9 points. It's a math equation effectively. It's the opposite of what the offense is trying to do. And analytics really only applies to taking threes over long twos. A team is still going to try to get layups and dunks because those are the highest percentage shots that you can get. This theory is employed not only by the Los Angeles Clippers, who are like the second or third best defense in the NBA, but the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are the best defense in the NBA by quite a sizable margin. They, much like the Bucks, have multiple interior presences. Not right now because Chet Holmgren is injured, but when this team is fully healthy, you have Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. You have two 7-footers to defend the paint, and you have a wide array of very solid defenders on the perimeter. Oklahoma City more so, they really don't have any weakness on that end. Milwaukee does, and it's Damian Lillard, but you can hide him. The reason this philosophy works for certain teams is that they just have the personnel to execute it. When teams do get hot from three, it's unlikely, especially in a playoff series, that they will sustain that for 7 games. And if they do, it is a testament to their talent. However, it's hard for a team to shoot 38, 39, 40% from three in a playoff series against an elite defense like Milwaukee or like Oklahoma City Thunder. The reason that I believe the Milwaukee Bucks can be talked about as title contenders once again is that they have 3 key ingredients that every championship contender has. They have star power. Undeniably, they have like the third, arguably the second, even arguably maybe even the best player in the NBA in Giannis. Damian Lillard is performing not just at an all-star level, but at an all-NBA level. You have 2 bona fide, legitimate superstars that you can lean on to create offense. And as we know, if a team can lean on their defense, there's not as much pressure applied onto the offense to execute at a perfect level. The second thing they have is, we'll just continue on with it, an elite defense. There's really no other way to describe it. It is a very solid all-around defense that it's clear they can perpetuate for the rest of the season. They've played at this level for 30 games. That's more than 30% of the season. That is a legitimate sample size to base this off of. Barring an injury to anyone, the Bucks will continue to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. And the third is depth. As I mentioned before, you have 8, 9, maybe even 10 guys, depending on what happens with Pat Connaughton, who you can throw out. You can give the opponent so many different looks. You can run the Giannis and the Brook Lopez double big lineup. You can play small. You can play Giannis at the 5. You can play Giannis at the 1 and have Damian Lillard play off of him. You can have Giannis, Dame, and Chris Middleton all be on the floor together and then surround them with even more shooting in Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince. It's all about options. It's all about the offense being as dynamic as possible. Now, the one reason why folks should be skeptical of Milwaukee is, unfortunately, Doc Rivers is their head coach, and Doc Rivers does not have the greatest track record of performing well in the postseason. He is a title-winning coach, so take that for what it's worth. But this guy has had multiple instances of floundering in the playoffs. But if we eliminate that, if we just look at this team on paper, I believe it is safe to say that the Milwaukee Bucks have re-emerged as championship contenders. I still believe that Boston and Cleveland are the two best teams in the Eastern Conference, and I do believe that Boston will represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I think that the margin between the four top teams, I'm including the Knicks in there as well, is shrinking. You could make the case that the Eastern Conference has four teams that could go to the postseason. And it is all because they have the same makeup, just different versions of it. Multiple stars. They play defense. They have depth. All of the role players complement each other. So things are going to get really wacky towards the end of this season. Things could even get wackier once the Orlando Magic are fully healthy. It's going to be a very exciting playoff run for the Eastern Conference. And I'm only limiting it to the Eastern Conference because this is a video about the Milwaukee Bucks. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. Everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one.